Movie adaptations of popular video games have always had a troubled history. Most of these times these movies are a mess made only to siphon money away from gullible gamers. There are some exceptions though, like Sonic the Hedgehog, Detective Pikachu, and Werewolves Within, which is a video game, I think. Oh, it is. The point I'm trying to make is that usually video game movie equals not a good movie. Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City falls in the rare category of, it was okay. Just to make things easier, I'm just going to simplify it down to REWETTERC, because it sounds funny. REWETTERC wasn't very good, but it wasn't very bad either. Let's start off with the positives to keep things up and up. In my opinion, REWETTERC does a fantastic job of recreating the classic and beloved and terrifying locations of Resident Evil 1 and 2. The filmmakers did an excellent job of making sure that every little detail was transferred from the games to the movies pretty well, if you ask me. If you played the games like me and my buddy Colton, then you'll no doubt be in awe of how cool some of these locations are seen on the big screen. Overall, the cinematography wasn't awful. Obviously, it wasn't a mega studio blockbuster film. The studio that did work on it was working on a budget, and you can tell. However, what they did on that budget was pretty good. They were able to pull off some really cool shots and shot sequences that didn't look too shabby. One scene that really stood out to me was towards the beginning of the movie, where Claire was looking out into the forest, and it looks to be completely empty and cold and dark at first, but then as the camera zooms in onto the forest, you can see ever so slightly in the darkness a zombie staring back at her, and it kind of gave me chills, honestly. It was pretty cool stuff if you ask me. Speaking of characters, let's get to their costumes. The costume designs for each of the main characters are 100% accurate to the games, but it's accurate enough to where you can tell which character is which based solely on the costumes, which is needed for this movie, because unfortunately some of the casting decisions weren't as accurate to the games as people may have hoped. Leon and Jill are the most obvious examples of this issue. Here is a picture of Leon and Jill from the games, and here is a picture of Leon and Jill from the movie. You can see the issue here. Look, I'm down for a diverse cast and all, but Avon Jogia? What the fuck do you pronounce his name?
Avon Jogia.
But Avon Jogia, the guy who plays Leon, looks more of like a Carlos from Resident Evil 3 than a Leon. And I have a theory on that, which I'll touch back in at the end of the video. Another downfall of the movie is the plot. You see, REWETTERC attempts to combine the events of Resident Evil 1 and 2 into one narrative. The issue is that in Resident Evil 1, the events of that game take place about 2 months before the events of Resident Evil 2. So chronologically, this wouldn't be possible if they were trying to stay canon to the original games. However, figured out about halfway through the movie that they didn't really care about staying canon to the games, which is perfectly fine. So think of it more as an alternate universe where tiny events here and there led to the events of the 2 games happening closer around the same time, or, as in the case of the movie, on the same day. On paper, this doesn't necessarily sound like a bad idea. In fact, I think it'd be great if it was executed well. This was not executed well. There were too many characters and too many little side stories going on at once, and it just didn't work. It just kind of all jumbled together, and to me, it just didn't feel clean. It just felt kind of like a big mess. A major one of these little stories being a movie original friendship between Claire Redfield and Lisa Travers. Yeah, you know, friendship between Claire Redfield, Lisa Travers, you know, the creepy girl from Resident Evil 1 that tried to kill you. I mean, it could work if executed properly, but again, it wasn't executed properly. All it really ended up being was for a cheap way for Claire and Leon to survive a liquor encounter. I mean, Lisa sorta progressed the plot along, but it didn't really help. All she did was show Cleon a passage to the secret Umbrella facility, but they could have figured that out for themselves. Well, Claire could have. Leon was literally written as a Florida man in this movie, which I didn't really like. Speaking of the liquor though, let's take a look at that scrumptious CGI. Tasty. Yeah, CGI in this movie isn't really that great. There were a few shots like a helicopter crash in Birkin's first form that looked pretty dang good. but you can tell that that's where most of the CGI budget went, because the rest of the shots in this film are not very good. There is one CGI shot at the end of the film though that was just downright hilarious, and me and Colton and Luke were just laughing in the theater, and I'm not going to spoil it because it's genuinely funny. All I'm going to say is that it involves a cow. Alright, that's all you're getting, and you're just going to have to go see the movie to see what I'm talking about. The human zombie makeup wasn't all that bad either, but the zombies were somewhat strategically smart for some reason. There were a few instances where they would actually work together, it seemed, to like get the biggest spook out of each individual character. It was kind of funny. The one that comes to mind is there was a scene in the Spencer mansion where Chris is in a dining hall kind of fending off for himself, and he loses all of his lights and his guns and only has left his little flick lighter. So he flicks the lighter, there's a zombie there, it gets blown out. He flicks it back on, zombie gets closer, gets blown out. He flicks it back on again, the zombie's gone. Camera turns around to him, he's like, where did he go? It pans over to a zombie just kind of chilling there under the table like, howdy partner, how's it going? It pans back to Chris, who's absolutely bewildered at a southern zombie in upstate New York or whatever Raccoon City is. And then there's just the one zombie behind him just going like, hey partner, time to knob. And it almost seemed like the zombie was like, okay, you go over there, I'll come over here to the table and spook him, and then that way you can come back and bite him in the neck. So with that said, the movie kind of relies too much on jump scare for the horror elements. Like towards the beginning of the movie, there were some genuinely creepy moments whenever the citizens were kind of first turning into zombies, but after that it was just guns blazing, and without the jump scares it would just be an action movie with zombies. All in all, REWETTERC wasn't a good movie, but it wasn't a bad one either. Stunning recreations of the classic Resident Evil locations and pretty decent cinematography were really brought down by just a weak plot and bad CGI in general. I mean, CGI looked like if it was made back in the early 1990s or the first Resident Evil games. Okay, that's a little bit harsh, but the point is that it just wasn't good. This is my first review of something entertainment-wise on this channel. I need to think of something, some sort of counter or meter to come up with. I got something. Ooh, how about cosmic cookies? Because my whole deal is space. Screw it, we're going with the cookies. In my opinion, I would serve this movie 5.5 cosmic cookies out of 10. I think this could have been a really good movie if they decided to combine the events of Resident Evil 2 and 3 into one movie. I mean, the title would still work, the story would be much more accurate to the games, and freaking Leon would be played by somebody who actually looks like Leon, and Avon what's his freaking, how do I say his name again? And Avon Jogia would be able to play Carlos, who he seems like he was born to play. I mean, look at that. Look at that. They were meant for each other, man. My theory is that this was originally a fan film that was intended to combine the events of Resident Evil 2 and 3 into one film. The writer pitched it to a production company hoping to capitalize on the success of the Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3 remakes. However, as production companies do, they started to alter some things, change the script into what we see as REWETTERC, sullying what could have potentially been a really good fan film. Thanks for watching. Like I said, this was my first entertainment review video, and if you liked it, be sure to leave a comment down below saying so and leave a like so I'll know you want more of this stuff. I stream pretty much every evening at twitch.tv/KingAlive0_0, you know, gaming stuff, the usual stuff. So if you haven't already, stop by and drop a follow. Anyway, that's all I got for today. Keep staying awesome, love the neighbor and all that good stuff. Got you guys in the next one. Arrivederci! Yeah.